So, have you used Filament for your tool stack applications before? I have, and I love it. It's great for creating admin panels. But there's a lot more to it. You can actually use the components within Filament in a normal tool stack application. I'm going to show you how today. As you can see here, we've got a login form, which takes an email and a password, and it's got a submit button. Let's go have a look and see what the code looks like. All we've got here is a Livewire component for the form. All we've got is a form which has a wire submit method. We render the form from the component and we have a submit button. So if we go look at this component itself, we implement has forms from Filament itself. We use a trait interacts with forms. We then add a property to capture all that form data or form state. And within our mount method, we just tell the form to fill. We then have a form method, which we define our form schema with. This is where we say we want to make an email text input. We want to make a text input called email. We then want to make sure it's an email type of text form. We're going to turn off autocomplete and say that it is required. Next up, we're going to create a text input for the password. Tell Filament that it is a password. We want to make it revealable, so when someone types, we want them to be able to click to see what they've typed. Going to turn off autocomplete and say that it's required, and map the form state to the data property. Finally, when this is submitted, all we've got to do is say this form get state, and that will give us this object here, allowing us to validate or access any aspects of the form. Pretty handy. So what we're going to do here is let's just create a new component. So PHP artisan livewire make, we're going to create that within auth, and we're going to call it register form. So there we go. We've got everything we need so far. If we now come down to here, this is going to be our view. So on this part here, on the blade view itself, all we need to do is load that livewire component. So we can say livewire auth.register form. So now when we click here, that should be loading. Let's go and work on how this form should look. So we can pretty much copy the same thing across here. We're going to have a submit button. We're going to load the form in, and this is just going to say create account. So now if you come back, form is not found on the component yet. Let's go work on this component and see what we can get it to do. So on our register form, we want to implement has forms. To access all of these methods, we want to say it interacts with forms. Let's fix all of that. Let's add a return type here because we like to be clean in our code. And let's make sure that we are, following some good practices here. We want to factory make the view, where the view is livewire auth register form. So we can just remove that helper class and everything's starting to get there. First things first, we're going to have an array of data, which is defaulting to an empty array. Inside of our mount methods, we want to add the form fill. So we can say this form fill. Now let's declare what our form is going to look like. This is going to return the form with a specific schema and the state path will be data, just like before. Finally, let's add on a submit method, which will return void for now. And this is how we handle the form submission. So inside this schema, when we create a user, what do we want to do? Well, we're going to want a text input, and we're going to make the name. This is a required field. We are going to say that autocomplete is, we're going to say that autocomplete is false because we don't want it. And that's all we need to start with. Let's go see how this is looking on the browser. As you can see, we've got a name. You can see it's got an asterisk there because it is required. And we've got some browser validation going on as well. So let's carry on. Next up, we're going to want our email as well. So we're going to text input, make email. This is going to be an email. It is required. Autocomplete is going to be turned off. Come back to our browser. Straight away it's there. I don't have to worry about creating any inputs, creating input components to use when I've already got Filament in place. So let's go finish off this form. So we've got an email, we've got a text input, make for the password. We are going to make sure that this is a password. It's going to be revealable. Autocomplete is going to be turned off. It's required. We're going to set a minimum length of 6 and a max length of 255. So let me see, do they have confirmable? No. So come back to our form and we can register a new user. So we can say Steve McDougall, just Steve McD at gmail.com, and I want a password of password. And if I click that button, I can see the password. Now we're getting an error here, which is half expected. So once we submit, we're not doing anything. So we're going to die and dump on this form get state. So come back to our browser. Fill it in again. gmail.com password. As you can see, we're getting the state from our form in an array that we can just quickly access. Pretty nice and easy to work with. So finally, what we'll do is this is going to do a couple of things. First off, what we want to do, the data at this point is already validated because of the form component. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say we want to create a user and we want to authenticate the user, and then we want to redirect. So creating user and authenticating user, we're going to need a couple of things. So let's pull in the database manager as database, and let's pull in that auth manager as auth. First things first, our user is going to be database transaction, where the callback is going to be user query create. And we're going to do this manually here. So we're going to have a name. We're going to have a name where we can say Let's just get the data out first. First thing is let's get the data and say this form get state. So down here, we can just say data name. Email is going to be data email. Password is hash make on the data password. We've now created a user. We've wrapped that in a database transaction just to make sure that anything that could be happening with causing issues or network glitches, they're accounted for. Next up, we want to say auth, login using ID, and the ID is going to be user ID. Finally, we are going to say this redirect. The URL is going to be root pages home. And that is it. That's all we need to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to migrate and seed my database. Or sorry, migrate my database, a clean one. And let's come and have a look. So we could say Steve, Google, email is just stevemcd@gmail.com, and password is password. Now if I click create an account, I am logged in, and as you can see down here, I am logged in on the web guard as just stevemcd@gmail.com. I've done it. That's exactly how you use Filament within a ToolStack application, which I didn't know about at first. I wasn't aware that you could do this, so I'm super happy. Thank you. Catch you later.